Welcome to the Private Practice with Soul podcast. My name is Dr. Storme, and I help private practice owners align their business back with their soul's calling, with their big vision and with their soul's purpose. Unlike other private practice coaches, I've traveled the world in search of spiritual resources, spiritual tools, education and information so that you can have the transformation that your soul desires and needs so that you can up-level your business. How much fun is this? I love it so much. Guys, if you're not already a member of the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group, please check out the show notes. I would love for you to be there. In the meantime, thank you so much for pushing play today. Let's begin. Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday and welcome to another episode of Private Practice with Soul. If we haven't met yet, my name is Dr. Storme. I'm a coach to private practice owners. I've had a private practice for over 20 years. I've worked as a psychologist for over 20 years, though I'm retiring from that shortly. And what I want to do today is address one of the things that pops up from time to time when I'm working with private practice owners, either in my group or as one-to-one clients, and that's this issue of overwhelm. And people will say to me, how do you do it? Like, you can just work for a few hours a day and you can go off to ballroom dancing and you can go for hikes and you can go and have your massage. And like, I'm still there after hours catching up on the admin. And I think this is one of the areas that psychologists, social workers and counsellors could absolutely be doing better at, and that's managing the systems and the processes that they have in their practice. I know it sounds really boring, and I know you probably think you don't have time for that because you put your attention and your intention on being of service perhaps to the clients and doing that direct client work. And we tend to fall under the illusion that that's the most important part of the job, when actually all of it's very important. If you don't have good admin in place, if you don't have good systems in place, you're not going to be in a position where you can put your best foot forward and truly help the people that you really, really want to be helping, because you're going to be distracted. You're going to be in a session maybe, but your mind is going to be thinking about that letter you've got to get off to so-and-so's doctor, or, you're going to finish a session and then you'll see, your next client has arrived 20 minutes early and they're waiting for you in reception, and now you feel pressured because you're aware that they're out there, and you think to yourself, oh, it feels really mean to leave them sitting out there, and they know now that I've got this 20 minutes up my sleeve, and it feels mean and wrong to go and sit in my office and close the door and catch up on my admin. And you know what, even if you can wrap your head around that and you go in your office and you close the door and you sit down to do your admin, you can't do it well anyway because you're so distracted. Your mind's out there in reception with the next client. So what ends up happening is that the admin can snowball. And then it gets to the end of a working day, you've seen, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 clients, and then you stay back because you've got to do the admin from all the people that you didn't see. And it's just heavy and hard, and I don't want you feeling like your practice is heavy and hard. And I know what it's like because I didn't have any systems and processes and policies and things like that in place for my practice when I was a solo practitioner either. Just didn't occur to me. Nobody ever mentioned that I should. So I was just doing what I felt was the right thing to do. And anyway, ended up making, without realizing it, of course, a whole lot more work for myself. But it was really through doing some of this work around alignment and really getting into my purpose and allowing myself to envisage, okay, let's say I am running my ideal private practice. What does the admin look like? And being daring enough to ask myself that question, daring enough to allow my mind to imagine, what would that look like? And it was so interesting what came up because, straight away I saw that I had an admin person. Well, at the time I didn't have one. I do now. I've got an admin team and it's very affordable. They're virtual and it's amazing. They do a wonderful job. The other thing that I realized was that I was doing a lot of the paperwork, or I was getting clients to do a lot of the paperwork. and it either wasn't getting done or it wasn't getting fully done. They'd fill out some questions instead of all, or I would fill out some questions instead of all. And then what was happening was, it's just a backlog of stuff. Like, it was all this stuff that I knew I had to scan and put into files, or transcribe and put into files, and just pile up, because I think to myself, oh, I can't do that now because, John Smith is coming in for his appointment in 10 minutes. But guess what? There's always a John Smith coming in for their appointment. And so anyway, it was really by thinking about, if I was running the practice the way I really wanted it to, what would the admin side of things look like? And one of the things I realised was I'd have a lot of it on autopilot. And then that got me thinking, okay, well, is it possible to have a lot of the paperwork on autopilot for the practice? And it was from that space that I started to explore what that could look like and what would be involved with that. And then I was lucky because the practice management software that I use, I've used it for years. It used to be called Health Kit. Now it's called Halaxy, like the word galaxy, but with an H. They're constantly making all these updates to their software. It's free software. You only pay for certain parts of it. That's a whole other story. But anyway, it's free software. So if you wanted to and you don't have practice management software and you're looking to start a private practice, go and check it out. It costs you nothing to get started. But anyway, they now have some functions that are available through their platform where you can get clients to fill out documentation before they turn up for their appointment. How cool is that? It is so cool. And anyway, so then it was just a matter of really thinking about, okay, well, what do I want to ask my clients? And so what I'm talking about is an intake form. Now, intake forms, we learn about them at university, we learn about them at college. Every place I ever worked had an intake form, and some of them were longer than others. Some of them had a different focus, but generally they all had the same kind of key areas, because an intake form traditionally wants to try and capture information about where a client is sitting in that point of time. So we want to have a look at their social functioning, occupational functioning, emotional functioning. We need a picture of their health past and present, and we need some kind of information about their goals, like why are they here now. And so anyway, I was having a look at all of these different intake forms. Google's a wonderful thing, and none of them were really resonating with me. And then I called myself back home and said to myself, remember, you're all about alignment. So let's look at what an intake form would look like that was aligned with the practice values and my values. And I want to get an understanding of the client's values, because here's the other thing. I don't have to accept every client that comes my way. I get to choose now who I want to work with. I've always had that ability to choose who I want to work with, but never realized it. I never acted on it. I never embodied that. But anyway, so then I sort of sat down and I allowed myself to just kind of daydream for a moment and think, what would an intake form look like? And so keeping in mind, an intake form needs to certainly address all of those areas of functioning. I also included a section on my intake form that asks questions that elicit information about the client's motivation for therapy, about their expectations for therapy, about their goals for therapy. I want to know why they're getting help now, especially when we know that many of our clients, not all, but many of them, have had long-standing mental health issues. Like, why get help now? I want to know, what they really value in a therapeutic relationship. I want to know what they value in the therapeutic process. I want to know their measure of success for therapy. How will they know that therapy was successful for them? What will be different in their life? And so when I started thinking about all of this stuff, I thought, I'm going to put these into my intake form. So that's what I did. And then what ended up happening was, just got it on autopilot, goes out to all of my clients before they book an appointment. And anyway, it meant then that I then had to look at a process. So the process that I implemented was this form gets emailed out to all new clients, right? When they book their first appointment, this email goes out to all new clients with instructions on how to complete the documentation. Now, what happens is this is a fillable form. It's fillable online through Haloxy. And what happens is the client just opens it up on their device or on their computer or something like that. They tick boxes and they fill out the answers, and that automatically updates in their file. It's removed the need for me having to scan things. It's removed the need for me having to transcribe things and try and decipher my own scribble. It's freed up time, because how long does it take? Come on, how long does it take to type out the notes from an intake form, or to elaborate on those notes and, all that sort of stuff. So it's so efficient. And so what we do is before, 24 hours before the appointment, we'll go into the client's file. So we have a look at tomorrow's appointments. If we've got new ones in there, we jump into their file on Haloxy. We have a look. If that form hasn't been filled out, again, through Haloxy, we can send that client a little email or an SMS reminder to say, hey, check your email. There's some documentation we need you to complete before our session tomorrow. And then what happens is they fill that out. And then before they come for their appointment, it means that I or their, practitioner can jump into that file and, review the information that the person has already put down there. And how helpful is that? How helpful is that to know, the level of motivation of your client, what's prompted them to come along now, what they really value in a therapeutic relationship, what they really value in therapy, how they know if therapy is going to be successful for them, all of that sort of stuff. How helpful is that for your clinician to know? I think it's super helpful because it can help that clinician, frame a first session to align with that client's values, and they know what the client's needing and wanting and expecting. Of course, you want to use part of that time in an initial meeting to review the content that was provided by the client on that intake form and seek clarification, but it also creates discussion points. And you know me, I'm not just about let's treat anxiety, let's treat depression. I want to go further than that. I want to take the conversation further with clients. I want to know more of that. I want to know their perspective on things. It's really important to me to help them understand, well, yeah, let's imagine I do get better. What would it look like on the other side of therapy? What would be different in my life? Because here's the thing too, it may just be the demographic I have been working with, but probably the majority of my clients have had long-standing, 5+ years of depression or anxiety. It's like once a doctor tells them they've got that diagnosis, they never let it go, in some ways, just in my opinion and in my experience. It's like they identify with that label and don't want to let it go or can't let it go, or they feel like they're still experiencing it, and they are from time to time, but for some of them, it's gotten to the point where they're not able anymore to distinguish between what's a, air quotes, normal experience of anxiety that, we would all experience versus what would be a more clinical diagnosis of anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. And so, for some clients, they've got now an identity of, I have anxiety, I'm an anxious person, I'm this, I'm that. And so, they can go and see, how many times have you worked with someone, they're like, you're the 7th psychologist I've seen, or you're the 17th social worker I've seen, and no one's been able to help me. And, I can't shake this. Some of that's around identity, not all, but some of that is. And so I want to help them future pace and say, okay, well, how would you know if the therapy had helped? And they're going to say, oh, I wouldn't be as anxious anymore. Great. What's that going to look like for you? And start to get them to open their mind and expand their awareness around what it's going to look like for them when, the therapy has been effective. Because I bet for a bunch of them, not all, but I think for a bunch of them, they probably haven't even stopped to think what it will be like for them to be able to manage their anxiety and what's going to become available and open. So I want all of that captured in my intake form. I want to honor the process by helping my clients start to think this is possible. Let's look at what would need to be different in order for me to be getting well again, and start having that thinking activated for the client before they even start in the therapeutic process. It's just my approach. It might not be for you, but it's just my approach. I'm being honest and transparent here. So anyway, I include those sorts of questions in my intake form because I want that expansion for them. I want to make life easier as well for the clinician and for the client to be able to come together in that therapeutic space so that they can do that deeper work that's going to help them get to the goal that the client has for themselves and their functioning. So anyway, then what happens is all that information is stored in the file. All happens automatically. The clinician doesn't need to do anything. It's super easy for the client. They don't have to print anything off. They don't have to be computer savvy. They've literally just got to tick a box. That's it. It takes them about 15, 20 minutes to do. And then what happens is it automatically saves into the client file, as I mentioned before. And here's the really, 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 really good thing. It's so super helpful because it's a really comprehensive form. And the reason I think it's really, really helpful is because how many times has this happened to you? You've been in private practice, you've worked with somebody for like 4 sessions, and then they've disappeared. You've closed up the file, and then 4 or 5 years later, you get a request from a lawyer saying, John Smith or Jane Doe, you used to treat them and now they've got a court case coming up. We need a report from you. And you don't remember perhaps who Jane Doe was because you've seen so many hundreds and thousands of clients and thousands of hours of counselling since then with other people. And you go back to your file and you have a look at your notes and you're like, oh yeah. But now you've got this really comprehensive form there that tells you about the education, the goals, why she came, what she was hoping to get out of it, all of that sort of stuff, what her obstacles were that have gotten in the way before, what she needs to happen in order to have success in her treatment now. All of that sort of stuff is there. And so it means that, it's much less stress for your clinician because now they have a place that's got accurate information as reported by the client. It's dated, all of that sort of stuff. And you've got that in addition to any other information that you gather during the course of the therapeutic relationship, like previous assessment reports and things like that. So I think you just make your life a whole lot easier as a practice owner and as a clinician when you have a form like this, because it will stop you stressing out when you do have to write a report. And they will come. Trust me. They will come. You will get contacted years after seeing somebody. You might have only seen them twice. And you're going to get a letter or a fax or an email from a lawyer saying so-and-so wants access to the full medical records and we need a report about this or the other. And do you know what? If you don't have all that information there because they did only come once or twice, then it's going to be really, really hard for you to write that report. Here's the other thing. If you save getting that intake information for a clinical interview, let's say you want to get more of this information in person, right? You want to do that in the first session or the second session. I think that is such an art to be able to navigate because, and again, this is just my opinion, but I want to spend my first couple of sessions holding space for my client, creating that safety space for them where they can feel trust, safe, secure, heard, not judged, valued, like I'm there for them. I'm all ears and I want to hear their story. I want them doing most of the talking, okay? If I sit down and I say to a client in the first session, right, we're just going to do an intake session. This is our first appointment. Welcome. Today and next time you come, we're going to be doing a bit of a history. So I'm going to be asking you some questions. And it's just going to be like I'm interviewing them. And how on earth is that going to help build a therapeutic relationship? It needs to happen because the clinician needs that information, but does the client need to be sharing it for 2 hours and paying for the privilege? I don't know. It's different case by case, client to client, clinician to clinician, practice to practice. I get that. But for me, my approach is I would much rather be present and let the client speak and share their story rather than make the client feel like it's another interview. And again, it's just because a lot of the clients that I work with have already told their story a million times, gone through those interviews a million times. And I want to honour the fact that they've been brave enough to try again. And here they are in my room now, wanting help now, needing support now. And so I want to honour that for them. And one of the ways I do that is not by interviewing them. Hopefully that information will come out in, the discussion way we can have that discussion. But I certainly don't sit there with my laptop or a clipboard and, a document and just work through it and plough through that for 2 sessions. No. So that's the value of having a good intake form. Now, once you've got that form, as I said, you can always use that as a starting point to clarify anything that you need in terms of further information. It's fantastic to have all of that there. And yeah, what I've done to try and make your life easier too is, in case you don't have one, or in case you want to eyeball mine or something like that, I'm going to share mine with you. So it's in the show notes. You can just click that and you can get it. Now, I did share this with a colleague of mine and I said to her, hey, I'm going to give this to everybody because I think that it's going to be helpful for some people who are just starting out in private practice. And also I want to show people who have been running a private practice for a little while how you can streamline your intake assessments and things like that and just make their life a little bit easier. And I love your feedback on it. And so she had a look at it and she goes, she said to me, I love that it's fillable. That's amazing. And then, because I always ask my colleague for a feedback sandwich, right? I say to her, you have to start positive, give me the punch in the middle, and then finish positive. So she says, I really like that the form's fillable and clickable. That's great. And then she said to me, but it's really ugly. It's very ugly. And she had 3 exclamation points after that. And, that hurt my feelings a little bit because I thought, oh, well, I don't think it's so ugly. But anyway, and then she finished up by saying she loved the information that it captured or something like that. But here's the thing. When you have a look at it, maybe you're going to think it's ugly too. I mean, hopefully not. What I've done is I've taken the questions I use on my intake form that are now on Haloxy, and I've put them for you in a Word document. And the reason that I've done that is because I want you to be able to edit this to suit your private practice. So have a look at it. It's about 7 pages long. Don't freak out. It's about 7 pages long. But there's going to be sections in there that perhaps aren't relevant to your practice that you can just delete. Plus, maybe you're going to get inspired by some of the information that's on there around what I was talking to you about before, like client values. And maybe you're going to think, oh, well, I'll delete some of these because they don't really fit with my vision and values, but I can put in some of my own. So what you can do with this document is absolutely edit the heck out of it, go for it. You can get in there, brand it as your own, put your own logo on it, your own address, your own email, phone, website, all of that sort of information. You can put your own instructions on there to clients, do whatever you like with it. It's yours as a gift from me. And guess what? You will make it pretty with your logo and your color, and you can change the font and do all of that for yourself as well. All right, so you'll be able to make it pretty for you. So at the moment, it doesn't look that pretty because it doesn't have all of your branding and stuff on it, but it will. And what I would really love is if you could let me know what you thought of it. I would love to see your finished intake form. If you do end up using this one and you brand it and everything, I would love to have a look at it and, see what you've done. And I hope that this episode of the podcast today helps you take some of the pressure off yourself, take some of the pressure off your clinicians, take some of the pressure off, the first 1 or 2 sessions of counselling and building that therapeutic relationship. And I really hope that by having a deeper understanding of a simple automated process like this, you'll be able to see how you can mitigate so much future stress as well for your practice and for your clinicians. So if you found this episode helpful, please let me know. Send me an email, leave a review. It would be amazing. And thank you so much for listening today. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye. Welcome to the Private Practice with Soul podcast. My name is Dr. Brooklyn Storme, and I help private practice owners align their business back with their soul's calling, with their big vision and with their soul's purpose. Unlike other private practice coaches, I've traveled the world in search of spiritual resources, spiritual tools, education and information so that you can have the transformation that your soul desires and needs so that you can up-level your business. How much fun is this? I love it so much. Guys, if you're not already a member of the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group, please check out the show notes. I would love for you to be there. In the meantime, thank you so much for pushing play today. Let's begin. Good morning, everybody. I know it's not Saturday, it's Monday, isn't it? And I'm very sorry that you didn't get the podcast episode on Saturday. I've had a few queries from people asking where was it and am I okay? Do you know what? The honest truth is I was just feeling like I needed a weekend to rest, recharge, repair. Honestly, you can go to my Facebook feed, you can go to my Instagram feed. I was using all my crystals. Yesterday I felt really drawn to my moldavite and my rose quartz and my chrysocolla. Oh my gosh, chrysocolla, it's so beautiful, isn't it? Google it if you haven't seen it already, but I love it because it reminds me of the beach. It reminds me of like waves crashing below the cliffs. It's a stone that has deep green, deep blue, little bits of brown like rocks that might be below the surface, and little bits of white like caps on the ocean waves. And I just look at it and I feel calm, but I know that calm is just a kind of like what we see on the surface, isn't it? When what's going on underneath all those caps on the waves is actually something very powerful. So I felt called to use my crystals yesterday. I got back into my regular routine of meditating. I woke up 10 minutes earlier today and did my meditation again. I'm just feeling so much better. So here's a lesson. If you're feeling like you're getting a little bit tired, then absolutely it's fine to take a break and allow yourself to rest and repair. I think you'll find most of the time, most people are very understanding. So anyway, today I want to answer a listener question. So this was a request that came through on email asking what's something that this lady might be able to do today that might be able to make a difference in her private practice. And I think this is a great question, but it's also very broad, isn't it? So what I've done is I've just thought about some clients that I've worked with in the past and some stuff that's been coming up lately in some of the groups that I'm in. And I thought I'd speak to that. So there was a lady, I'm going to say her name was Mel, but it wasn't. Mel was working as a psychologist and she was working for a non-profit organisation, okay? And she'd been there for maybe 5 or so years. And, you know, she started that job and in the beginning she was loving it. But what had happened was over time, she'd become very aware that there was pressure from the organisation for her to do a lot of the admin type things, like track her numbers. There was pressure on her to see a high volume of patients or clients. She had to move them through the system very, very quickly. So they had to come in, be triaged, have an assessment, all that sort of stuff. So some quick, direct therapeutic intervention, and then be, referred out for more sort of ongoing stuff. And so I guess what had happened was over time, I would become aware that the admin was increasing and the direct client work was decreasing. She'd also become aware that as this was going on, her joy and her happiness were decreasing because the role was no longer in alignment with her values. It was no longer in alignment with why she even got into psychology in the first place, which was to help people. The good thing about this situation was that it had given her a lot of time to reflect, and she became really aware that what was important to her was the long-term work with clients. She wanted to see somebody at the beginning of their journey and then through to the end of the journey. And that was super important to her. She had tried to see whether or not there was a way to make this work in her current workplace, and there just wasn't because of funding restrictions and this, that, and the other. So then she was talking to some girlfriends about it, and they'd suggested to her that maybe she look at starting her own private practice, right? Which, okay, great idea. But here's the thing, she didn't know anything about how to start one. And so she went into Facebook groups and she started asking people, I'm thinking of starting a private practice. So I'm just pouring myself a cup of herbal tea here while I'm talking to you because it's only 2 degrees in Western Port right now. It's freezing. I can't even see my front fence for the fog. It's crazy. Gabe, my dog, he's on the bed and I've turned the electric blanket on for him so he can be nice and warm. So he's rugged up and toasty warm over there. Oh my goodness. Anyway. So where was I? So she goes into these Facebook groups. She's like, hey guys, I'm thinking of starting a private practice. What do I do? And guess what? She gets bombarded with everybody giving their opinion on what she should and shouldn't be doing for private practice and on what they think the most important things are. And you know what? She's reading all of the comments, and while she's very grateful and thankful that people are writing back, it's making her more aware that there's a lot she doesn't know. And she's confused because people are telling her different things. Okay. So now she's like, all right, what do I do now? And here's the other thing, I think once you become aware that you're not happy in your current role, it makes that awareness increase, don't you think? Like, I know when I was working for an employer years ago, I got to the point where I wasn't loving it anymore. And then once I realized I wasn't loving it anymore, every subsequent day became more of an effort. And it had nothing to do with clients. I love doing the client work, but I just mean all that ancillary stuff that goes around it, right? So anyway, she wanted to know, like, what do I do? What's the next step? And so I spoke with her and we had a conversation. It was really nice, actually. And this is always such a joy for me because I love helping women unpack, their why. I want to understand what's important to her with her business, and I want to understand what her vision is. And a lot of the time people don't have one, They think that if you have a vision, it's got to be like what you learned about in high school when you were studying business management in year 10, that you've got to have this very formal vision and mission. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, I love to help women tap into, their big why. Like, why on earth did you spend 14 years of your life studying to be a psychologist, in my case, and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and sacrifice all that time where you could have been socializing, going out with family and friends, having a life, but you weren't because you had your head in a book because it was so important to you to get this qualification so that you could do what? And I don't think it's enough when women say, oh, I just wanted to help people. Yeah, everybody says that. But take it further. Like, how did you want to help them? Why did you want to help them? Did you have some experience in your life that made you want to give back, And so, in one of the groups, I asked people, what are your story? What's your story about why you started in private practice? And it was so beautiful to see why everybody got into it. Some people that had a really positive experience with a social worker or a counselor or a therapist or a psychologist while they were growing up, and that had really made such a deep and profound impression on them that that became their why. They wanted to do that too. They were inspired by their own journey working with that person. Other people said, well, I saw a movie and I realized, the impact that one person can have, and I really wanted to have an impact. And, things like that. Everybody has a different story, but it was just so beautiful to see. But that's what I mean in terms of trying to anchor into your vision. Like, really go back and think, why did I choose this degree? Why was it so important to me? I mean, if I said to you today, hey, come and get coaching and pay $40,000 for it and you can have a beautiful practice, you'd probably freak out. Yet you went and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on your university education, and you're really going to sit there and tell me you don't know why, or you did it to help? There are cheaper ways of helping people. You must have had some reason why this was important to you, and it was so important to you that you sat up at night and you did the assessments, you did the tutorials, you gave the presentations, you drove into the city, you went outside your comfort zone, you crammed for exams, how many hours have you spent in university libraries photocopying stuff or on the microfiche? Maybe I'm showing my age now. But you know what I mean? How many hours did you sit in lectures? How many hours did you spend outside of lectures sitting down with girlfriends, reviewing your lecture notes? All of that sort of stuff was propelled because you were motivated. But what were you motivated to do? Why? How did you want to help? And I think that is the first step in understanding what private practice can mean for you. Okay? And that's something that we tend to veer away from when we're working for other people. When we work for other people, it's kind of like getting married, I think. When you're in a long-term relationship or when you're married with someone, you know how it feels like you lose a little bit of yourself, but you gain a little bit of that other person. You start dressing the same, you start using the same phrases, you start watching the same things on TV, stuff like that. And then when the relationship falls apart, you go through this whole process of what's my identity, who am I? Oh, I'm going to go back and do those things that I used to do before I met him or her, right? And so you have to go through that process of rebuilding. I think it's kind of the same. When you're working for an employer, you leave some of your stuff at the door and you have to take on some of their stuff, don't you? And then when you leave, it's a matter of, oh yeah, what's my identity again? Why did I do this again? And that's got to be the first step. And the number one thing that you can do to make a difference today in your private practice is to allow yourself the space and the time to really reflect on your why, okay? And that's what your purpose is in a way, yep? It's not this big intangible thing that you can't see, that's bigger than you, that you'll never be able to figure it out. No. Make it easy for yourself and just ask yourself, yeah, why do I want to do this? And why is this so important to me? And what effect do I want to have on the world or on a certain group of people? Or how do I, not everybody wants to serve, by the way. Some people just don't like that idea of servitude. So if you're in that category, that's great, don't worry. But think about how you want to help, how you want to make an impact, just like you have an income goal for your private practice, you absolutely need to have an impact goal. So think about, what kind of impact do you want to make? What would that look like? Who are you working with? How are you working with them? What's the legacy? How do you help this person change? And what changes in their life around them? This is a ripple effect that you're throwing a pebble in the pond and you're creating this ripple effect, aren't you? It's the same with therapy. When we help one person, they then change who they're being, and what they're doing, how they're behaving, what they're thinking, feeling and saying to the people in their inner circle, and then to their friends and acquaintances, and then to who they work with. And do you see what I mean? The ripple effect. So that's the number one thing that you can do. And I think it's a step that's often skipped because we're just in a rush to get out of where we are and into something new. And we have these ideas. We're very focused on, you've got to make some money. I've got to do it for myself. It's going to be my way or nobody else's way. I'm choosing the furniture for my room. I'm finding a logo. I'm choosing a business name. It's all very, ego focused, keeping you nice and safe financially, nice and safe in a business sense, all that sort of stuff. But here's the thing, when you're not anchoring the practice from the beginning into your why, you're not going to have a soul aligned practice, are you? It's just going to be another business that you don't feel connected to. And you're going to have difficulty in that business because it's out of alignment with your values. It's out of alignment with your vision. So the number one thing that you can do right now, right today, that can make a difference in your practice is giving yourself the space to sit down and reflect on why you want to do this, okay? And I would also ask yourself, what stories are you telling yourself about running a private practice? Write that stuff out. What story am I telling myself about running a private practice? Or what story am I telling myself about starting a private practice? Write that out as a journal prompt and write for 4 or 5 minutes and see what comes up for you. And then ask yourself, all right, that was a surprise. That's interesting what's come up there. Where on earth did this story come from? Maybe it's your story based on your experience, but I bet it's not. I bet this is stories that you've internalized because you read it in a Facebook group, you read it in someone's email, you have girlfriends or colleagues that are running their private practice and they've shared their story with you and you've taken on their story as yours. I bet it's probably not even your story. And then ask yourself, how's this story helping you? Is it helping you? And journal to that. And then write out, what would I rather tell myself? What would I rather the story be about me and private practice? All right. So there's 4 or 5 journal prompts that you can use today that are super powerful. And I hope that they really do help you. The other thing that you can do to make a difference in your private practice today is get help. And I know there are so many of you who are new to this podcast, and I want to welcome you with open arms and, bless you. I'm so pleased that you're here. Honestly, I am. But one of the things about getting help from a new person is that you don't know them, right? So it feels scary and you kind of feel a bit hesitant and a bit resistant, don't you? I know. I've been in that position too. But something that really helped me was getting to know people first. And so what I can do to help you get to know me is you can absolutely come and join my group. It's only going to cost you $1 for the first 30 days. And I want to give you that so that you can see the training I provide in the group. You can participate in the coaching calls, get some support for your practice. They happen every Monday at 11 a.m. You're welcome to binge watch all of the pre-recorded ones, the recorded ones that I did before that are in there. Plus, I've got units in there where there are tools and resources to help you at any stage of your private practice. Plus, you get to join a community of other women who are at different stages of either starting or developing their private practice as well. And unlike other groups and coaches and stuff like that, my coaching is done through a spiritual lens. I want to help you understand how to work with your intuition in your private practice. I want to help you understand how to work with tools that can help you unlock and uncover some of the inner resources that you have so that you can affect change in your private practice that will bring it into alignment with your core essence. All right. But if you've been listening for a while and if you've been following me on social media for a while, then you well and truly know who I am and how I work. And I do have a couple of spots open for one-to-one coaching, and it's more affordable than you might think before you panic about the money. The goal has always been for me to help you get your practice where you want it to be, and it's not going to cost you a fortune to do that, but I want you to get the experience and get the results, okay? And I will put the information for both of those things and my email address in the show notes for you. So please get in touch with me, reach out. I'm so excited to hear what you thought about this podcast episode and if it made sense for you and if it landed for you. And if you loved it, please review it so that I can get it in front of more people, because that's part of my impact goal. All right, lovelies, have a beautiful day. Stay lovely and warm and stay nice and safe too. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Private Practice with Soul podcast today. If you're looking for clarity, if you need help with branding, your processes, and bringing everything into alignment with your soul's purpose for your private practice, head to the show notes and click the link for more information about the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group. You are going to love it. I can't wait to see you in there. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.